Race is an illusion, and we're not defined by our culture. Let's dive into the video. Michael Nicastro back for another weekly spiritual video. I'm going to be talking about something that may trigger you: race and culture. But this is not a new topic. This has been a topic of controversy throughout the ages, especially last year in 2020, with a lot of movements in support of the BLM community as well as the Asian community. But it's been going on throughout the ages with Arabs, Hispanics, Asians, blacks. This seems to never go away. I came out with a video last year regarding culture and racism. In this video, I've been thinking about those concepts in a different light. I hope that I can offer you a different perspective. My goal is to show you that we are more similar than we are different. Let's define race. Race describes physical and external traits. Let's just look at all humans. We are all standing animals. We all have a brain. We all have eyes. We all have a nose. We all have a mouth. We all interpret things through 5 senses. We have thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I hope you do, otherwise you'd be a robot. According to the National Human Genome Research Institute, all human beings are 99.9% identical in their genetic makeup. 99.9%. So only 0.1% is different. And they're saying that 0.1% holds clues to your susceptibility to different diseases and other things. But 99.9%. That means we're all pretty much similar. When I was younger, I remember filling out surveys for tests or just in general. I'd have to pick my race. Be like white, Caucasian, black, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian. Like 5 races. There were only 5 races. And me being racially Caucasian for my Italian side and Asian for my Chinese side, I didn't know which box to pick. So as I got older, they added more options to this survey. They added either an other box, an other, if you identify as other, I don't know what that meant, that really confused me, or one or more races. So what I realize now is that race is used to categorize population. We're all part of one race, and that's the human race. So why are we debating about this or arguing or separating ourselves or categorizing ourselves? Next point, end video. We defined race, let's define what culture means. Culture refers to the learned way of life and identification of a specific group of people. Culture is great in theory. I have a book here, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I have this, this is a Chinese moonshine container. It says Hong Kong on it. This is very old. I have a bottle of wine, and this is a mooncake stamp to make mooncakes. I have an elephant picture from Thailand, so I like culture. It's great in theory. It brings you together in a social group or by your country, and it's beautiful. With it comes language, music, food, art, and who doesn't love traveling? I love traveling, exploring the unknown. That's one of the joys of life. And just to experience how another group of people live their lives, it's very fulfilling. Just being able to understand that or accept or be willing to go is another thing. Now I'm going to suck the energy out of the room a little bit, but what brings you together can also divide you. I'll say it again. What brings you together can also divide you. Example would be social media. Social media is great. It can connect us. It can also deprive you of social interaction, actual social interaction face to face. How can it divide you? Well, groups of people attributed to social conditioning from these different institutions, governments, churches, countries, begin to adapt hyper nationalistic viewpoints of themselves, of where they come from. It's not a win-win mentality. It's more me versus you mindset. And adding on to that, it's exacerbated through the news and media. I mean, if you turn on the news right now, currently, you see a lot of tensions with the United States and the Middle East, or the United States and China. This indirectly, subconsciously influences your viewpoint on a certain group of people, because you watch the news that says like, this Chinese company stole information from the US, or the US is fighting a war in the Middle East. This does not positively influence your mindset of the country. Okay, and you can say you're not racist. Subconsciously, it doesn't feel right to hear this type of news. You feel sheltered, you feel afraid. Do you not? And when you're afraid and something dramatic happens like a war, it's easy to blame somebody else. It's easy to believe what someone's saying. It's easy, you're not gonna like what I like to say, it's easy to join a cult with an extreme way of thinking because you're in a fearful state and it's more like me versus you rather than we are all one. Look at the United States. A lot of people think we are hyper nationalistic, right? Let me try to understand why. I mean, let's look at the history. We basically fought a war for our independence from Great Britain, and then we fought a civil war amongst ourselves. We are very nationalistic because we fought for our identity, and the same goes for other countries too, like Israel, Korea, even Hong Kong. There's a lot of protests there now because of this idea of identity and freedom, and a lot of people are hyper nationalistic in these places. And there are more examples that I left out. It's just stating the fact that people can become hyper nationalistic. Let me tell you a story, and I've said this in my other video. I think it really describes how you can be quick to judge someone without really knowing their story. When I was 15 years old, my parents took me on a vacation to Los Angeles. If you're familiar with Los Angeles, they have a big Korean community. Me growing up in my little town in Long Island, New York, I grew up with all Italian kids and not so much Asian influence. I kind of renounced my Asian influence when I was younger because I wanted to be like the social group around me, which was the Italian Americans, white Caucasian. When my parents took me to LA, we all tried Korean food for the first time. I don't think my parents had tried Korean food. So I remember going to a really authentic Korean style barbecue restaurant. No one spoke English. There were only Koreans in there. We didn't know what to order. And there were so many small little plates, the banchan, like the fermented vegetables and little appetizers. And I didn't know what was happening. And I was kind of scared. And then the meat came out and they couldn't explain it what it was because they didn't speak English and my parents didn't know what it was either. So I remember leaving that restaurant feeling like, oh, I don't really like Korean food. Korean's kind of weird. I was quick to judge because I didn't have a positive experience because I wasn't guided along the way. Later on, when I went to college, my first year, my roommate was a Korean guy and we became really good friends. And he would take me to the Korean restaurant near campus. And we would sit there, just me and him, eating, laughing, having a good time. And he would explain what the food was and say he used to eat this when he was younger. I began to really like Korean food a lot. And I began to be super interested in Korean culture. Like I enjoyed K-pop, and I actually ended up going to Korea, visiting these friends, visiting his family. His family also came to New York. I showed them around. And I actually worked at a Korean restaurant in New York City. So it's funny how I basically had another chance to explore something different from what I was accustomed to on a deeper level, and my friend guided me through the process and told the story. And that's really important in describing culture. When you stay in your own bubble, when you don't travel, you stay in your small town with your same core group of friends and family, and then stuff on the news happens, you begin to be fearful instead of really embracing difference. But when you meet someone from another culture, I'm sure you've had similar experiences too, they're not necessarily how you thought they were, right? Like we're all pretty much the same, and you can befriend anyone, but you need to have an open mind and you need to let go of this wall that's been put up by a social construct. Once you get past that and you eat together, you talk, you can really get to know someone and find out that we're not really different. Also, it goes back to one of my videos about fitting in and mental health. If you don't care about fitting in and you're comfortable in your own skin, you cease to judge others because you realize we're all connected. And having that open mind to say like, oh, this is not what I'm used to, but let me try it out anyway. That takes courage, that takes discipline, because you need to go outside of your comfort zone. I like eating Italian food, but it's also nice to try something different on the menu from time to time. Just because it's not a respected thing in your culture doesn't mean another culture doesn't value it highly. For example, I remember when I worked in my advertising company, we had a team lunch at a fancy Mexican restaurant, and everyone was ordering like tacos, burritos, those sorts of things. And I saw on the menu they had cricket tacos, so I wanted to try something different. I ordered the cricket tacos and everyone thought I was crazy. Would I order it again? Maybe. It was a unique experience. Everyone was like, oh my god, you can't be, but like I wanted to try it. And if you have that mindset, you can really be surprised how much you can learn from other people, of other cultures, of other races. Like it's truly beautiful to have that open mind, because you realize that we're all one, we're all united, and we all are very similar. To conclude, racial segregation, it's been going on for too long and it needs to stop. Culture can be a beautiful thing, but we need to tell our cultural stories with respect, and we need to have an embracing, open mind to accept new things and to receive new things, to have a win-win mentality rather than a win-lose or taking mentality. There's a lot of controversy about like cultural misappropriation, taking concepts of this culture and using it as your own without giving credit. The main point with this is you should always give respect to the culture that you are identifying with. You can't claim something as your own. You always have to respect the history. And from my own experience in trying to identify with race and culture, it's caused me a lot of anger, frustration, and confusion throughout my whole life. As Italian and Chinese, growing up in America, I always tried to fit in, and I think this concept of fitting in creates division amongst us. I felt that growing up because I couldn't identify and I felt lost. I didn't know who I was. I had the opportunity to visit the lands of my ancestors, China and Italy, which was fulfilling not just because I got to see some cultural things, but it also brought me outside of my comfort zone, little town in Long Island, to see different things, right? And once I became okay with expanding my vision, my eyes to something new, I can see not just my own culture, but beyond, new cultures. But culture and race doesn't define who I am, and I think I'm a lot happier in coming to that realization now. I took off on my social media like Italian and Chinese. I don't want that to define who I am. I'm more than my race, than my culture, and so are you. No matter what race, it doesn't matter. You're so-and-so. We're all different men and women on our different journeys throughout lives. We are all part of vibrant, unique cultures that are beautiful, and we should share them amongst each other and come together, because we're all human beings having a human experience on this planet. We all bleed red, we all take a shit, we all eat food. Anyway, this video is very important to me because I talk about race and culture a lot, and it's been part of my journey. I hope you saw some value in this and I challenge your thought process. Main thing, let's come together as one. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you thought of it. Have a great day, have a great night, have a great morning, wherever you're coming from, whatever country you're coming from, whatever culture you're coming from, whatever race you identify as. I wish you health, wealth, love, and happiness. Peace.